So hello folks, new setup here with a new mic. Hopefully the audio is a bit better here and it's not too loud. And hopefully this picture's a bit better and this setup's a bit better. I'm working on it. But to dive right into this, I'm going to talk about the Ukraine-Russian war. Oh, just the amount of developments with that going on is crazy, especially in the last 4 or 5 days. And we're also going to talk about how Emmanuel Macron got reelected in this French election. So let's dive into it. So 7 big things. Sorry, I just raised my hand there. But 7 big things going on with this war in the last 4 or 5 days. So number 1, the United States is banning Russian ships from ports. No Russians allowed. You're out of here. I mean, that's huge. Now, I think that meant warships, but that probably means even ships with trade or whatever. So a lot of stuff is not going to be coming from Russia to the United States anymore. Number 2, Russia closes consulates of 3 NATO countries, 3 Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. I mean, that probably makes a lot of sense. There's been a lot of expelling of diplomats going on here and, consulates being closed and everything. And they probably want to get their people out of there, the Russians at the consulates, because, they're going to probably want to invade them next at some point. Number 3, and this is a really interesting one, Israel has added China's yuan for the first time ever, while cutting its dollar holdings for the biggest currency reshuffle in a decade. Something like this has always feared me a lot about, one of those Eastern Bloc countries such as China basically becoming the next world reserve currency. And I think overall the U.S. dollar is losing faith and people around the world are losing faith in the U.S. dollar. And I think countries, even some of which may be United States allies, might move more towards China. And they, in that part of the world, there's 7 billion people pretty much, and between the whole Western world, which is like Europe and United States, there's only about 1 billion people. They might just look at that and be like, screw you guys, we could just trade amongst each other, and there's more than enough people to provide products to and everything, and we could become wealthier as countries, and you guys lose, and you guys are going down the tubes. You never know, that could happen. This is a really interesting one. Taiwan Television Network apparently informed the citizens that China had invaded the country and was being attacked by Chinese missiles. I mean, that really goes to show you how much the Taiwanese government and their media are really preparing for China to invade. But you know what? Make sure it's the real thing next time. Don't panic people like that. This is interesting. Russian state media threatens to nuke UK. That's a huge threat. I mean, the United Kingdom still has a decent military for sure these days, and they're still one of the more powerful countries in Europe to this day still. Not, the empire that they once were, but still very influential, and still that's a big player to be threatening. Okay, number 6, Russia will deploy Satan missiles by autumn. They just shot one of their Satan missiles earlier in the week, and it's being compared, these missiles, to be able to blow up a state the size of Texas. I mean, that might be a little bit over-exaggerated, I'm not sure, but these are weapons we've never seen before, folks, and just absolutely crazy that they're threatening that soon. But I don't really think that that's how things work necessarily with warfare, that everybody's just going to nuke each other all at the same time, and it's just going to be nothing but nuclear war. Usually nukes are a last resort option, and there's this will for, countries to want to survive and for there to be something left at the end of the day and for life to keep going, even after tragedy and, annihilation. Number 7 here, Russia seizes thousands of tons of weapons and destroy NATO shipments to Ukraine. That's very interesting. It's actually amazing how underprepared most European countries are. I mean, after World War II, Germany had an agreement with the United States where they were not allowed to build arms up, and same with Japan. I mean, Japan's of course in Asia and in the Pacific more, but still very, 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 very crazy. Very crazy stuff, and I think NATO's a lot more underprepared than people actually think. I mean, when was the last time NATO fought a war in Europe? It was the Balkan Wars 30 years ago, so I think they're very rusty, and Europe is more unprepared than you think overall in their militaries, and they're way too reliant on the United States alone. And I'm sure the Russians realize that as well. And the Russians are getting great modern warfare experience right now in Europe. Absolutely they are. But to move on to my last point here, going to briefly talk about Emmanuel Macron getting reelected. I think with him getting reelected, we are this much closer. We are one step closer, this much closer to going into a major war with Russia here. I mean, I'm not going to say that Le Pen was necessarily a Russian fangirl, but I think if she were to have gotten elected, I think it could have helped de-escalate the situation and this blowing up into a bigger war. And you got to remember that Macron was a former Rothschild banker. These elites, such as the Rothschild and these international bankers, have a guy like Macron and probably many other politicians in their pocket already, and they'll be able to force a war. And they're going to probably end up going through with this embargo, possibly at some point, with completely banning Russian oil, like completely embargoing it, completely banning it, which, I mean, is really suicide. But yeah, basically all of Europe would go into a major recession, and probably most of the world would at that point. Like, the ripple effects that it would have would be nuts. So, yeah, that's basically what I think overall is that, I don't know if Macron getting reelected was necessarily the best thing, but the far right, it can be very dangerous too. I mean, I don't really know how far right Marine Le Pen really is. I don't know if they're just calling her that or like what. I only know so much about French politics, but usually during times of crisis, it's a perfect time for extremist ideologies to move in, like such as the far left and the far right, and for them to scoop in and bring people into their grasp and basically brainwash them and build their presence. I mean, guys like Hitler never let a good crisis go to waste, and guys like Stalin or Lenin, I would say Lenin more actually now that I think about it, never let a good crisis go to waste, and their ideologies built up more when things got really bad, and they were able to bring people into their folds. So, yep, time of crisis is a perfect opportunity to swoop in for extremist ideologies. Remember that. Peace out.